Good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to all of you who are joining me on this webinar. And I am Brahmachari Aditya, and I'm speaking from the Pune city community in Maharashtra, India. And thank you all for joining. As many of you know, the topic for this evening is success in God remembrance. I mentioned that because success is our, by the way, for those who may not know, we will be from every week, every Monday evening, we will be speaking from this book, Affirmations for Self-Healing by Swami Kirananda ji. And there are 52 affirmations, so we will be taking one for every week, and we will follow it all the way through in 2015. But since we wanted to start right away once we had this thought, there are 2 weeks remaining, and God remembrance is the second last affirmation for this year. And but we had advertised success, so I thought we'll speak of success in God remembrance, and I'm sure all the listeners you would appreciate that. It's a wonderful thing. And so that's where our talk will be going. This is going to be a half an hour talk, and I welcome you all to also post any questions that you might have, and towards the end we'll give a few minutes to answer those questions. I'd like to begin this seminar formally with a prayer. Please join me. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, beloved friend God, great masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramhans Yogananda ji, and saints of all religions, we humbly bow before you all. Beloved Masters, we invoke your presence in everything that we do. Bless us that we feel your consciousness and your loving presence within ourselves during meditation, and then in everything else that we do and in all people whom we meet. We long to be thy channels for love and joy in this world. Receive us. Om Shanti. Let's chant just for a few moments, and then a very brief meditation for a minute or so. The words to this chant that I've picked for this topic are: listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. And it's a wonderful chant for every devotee for this topic of remembrance. But also you can see this chant as sometimes being sung by God as a reassurance that he will never forget us and certainly never forsake us. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee, I will never forsake thee. And now let's sit upright, keeping a straight spine and our hearts open. and meditate for a minute or two. Om. 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 Friends, let's listen then to this week's affirmation for God remembrance. And Swami Kriyanandaji in this book, chiefly, he has taken these uplifting topics, qualities that we all aspire to, and then he suggests a brief, you might say, introduction to them, and he follows it with an affirmation. For those who are new and may not know, an affirmation, Swami Kiranandaji said, is a statement of truth, and it's good, it's best to have it positive. And so here we'll have an affirmation, and the purpose of having an affirmation is to essentially change our thoughts, change our habits, change our attitude or outlook on life. And because many of the thoughts that we possess, they are residing in our subconscious mind. And many a times, we would like to change something about us, but then we find it, again and again, there's something that's pulling us back. And this morning, I was giving a workshop in a corporate company, and I had to start with a brain model. And I showed them there's something in the front part of the brain, and there's something called the subconscious mind or the primitive brain, which is in the central and posterior part of the brain. And I said, you might think that, each time you want to move forward, there's a tendency, old habit and thought which just keeps pulling you back, even though you're consciously attempting. So an affirmation, when it is said and understood and repeated with concentration, devotion and understanding, it can in time certainly change us. And so let's see what Swami Kiranandaji says about God remembrance. To remember God means not only to think of Him constantly, but to realize that finding Him is an act of remembrance truly. For it is from Him that we have come. When the clouds of delusion evaporate from our minds, what will be left is what was there always, hidden behind the clouds, the blazing sun of divine consciousness. One should not strain nor reach outward mentally to think of God. Know that He has been yours always, nearer than your nearest thoughts and feelings, nearer than the very prayers you offer to Him. Think not merely about Him, think to Him. Share with Him your passing feelings, your idlest fancy. Talk with Him, practice His presence, at first perhaps for minutes a day, then for hours, and then all the time. And now let's affirm together. First we'll say this aloud, then we will repeat this line in a soft voice like now, and then whisper, and then a few times mentally. I will live in the remembrance of what I am, in truth, bliss infinite, eternal love. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth, bliss infinite, eternal love. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth, bliss infinite, eternal love. Now whispering, I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth, bliss infinite, eternal love. And now, focusing deeply at the point between the two eyebrows, let's try to project these words at that point of concentration. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth. Bliss infinite, eternal love. I will live in the remembrance of what I am in truth. Bliss infinite, eternal love. And let's offer this prayer. Lord, Thou art always with me. Help me to feel behind my thoughts Thy inspiration, behind my every emotion Thy calm, all-transforming love. So that's quite a statement. Swamiji says, that towards the end of the introduction, that when we are trying to practice the presence of God and trying to speak to Him, commune to Him, he says it's very good to, make a beginning. Of course, first we need to understand the importance. So many people today, we meet, they are doubting the very presence of God. And, Swami Kirananda often would ask them, and especially his greater audiences, I certainly saw him doing that. He would ask them, have you given Him a chance? Why don't you give God a chance? Or sometimes he would say, you always keep complaining, God is testing me, God is testing me. Why don't you test God for a change? Why don't you offer a prayer to Him? And actually, I was very intrigued by this because that was the way my own mindset changed. I was brought up as a doctor, and I thought, it was at the back of my mind in India, and I believe everywhere else, God is a very central part of human culture. And once I remember I spoke to my father and I asked him, I said, Dad, I was very small, and I said, what is God? And we were having a walk together, and he said, beta, Mahatma Gandhi? I said, yes. He says, let's imagine a few hundred years roll by, and people will maybe take a picture of his and, put it on a frame, and they will revere him as a god. Good people become God. And I liked the explanation till he was explaining it, but then I didn't question him back. But now that I think, at that time I was not satisfied. It seemed like still a small picture of God. And it was more based on people's assumption that a good man must be God. Well, he can be godly. I remember a psychiatrist once asking me, is not every doctor a saint? And I was like, I said, well, they are saintly. Many of them are saintly, probably saints. But I said, God, it's hard to speak about God. But we can start, as Swami Kirananda said, with God remembrance. And on the same lines, when I read autobiography, the thought and the suggestion of every saint in that book was, this is how I tried. No matter if they were a scientist, no matter it was Mahatma Gandhi, no matter it was a person from another country, this is how their questioning began, and this is how they received the answers. But after I came on the path and learned of Yogananda Ji's special affection and love for Saint Francis of Assisi, I read a few books on him. And he's again a saint many of us can relate to, because Saint Francis, in the beginning, he was a person with a lot of energy. He would love his friends, he would love life, and how many of us tend to be when we are energetic and in a happy mood. But then there came a time when he said, his friends said he was lagging behind in the group, whereas earlier he used to lead it. And then he started, thinking and gazing at the skies and such. And there came a point where his heart was not happy in the day-to-day things and affairs of money making. And one day a beggar came, and to make the really long story short, he gave him money and felt nice about it. And he realized, there's some joy now over here which I had not experienced. And then he started doing it more, giving clothes. He used to go and with his friends, then soon to leper colonies and started serving. And initially he thought he had found it. He had found the meaning of life. Till again, in a few days, that same thought came to him. I am not more happy. There is something more, his heart said. What is it? And, he almost began to weep one day and went to a river nearby his house. And there was a grotto, and he was praying and he was praying. And of course, he knew about the Bible. He says, what is it that I don't have? What is it? What is it? What more should I do? I've given money, I've given my seva, what should I do? And he heard the thought of God, his voice in his mind. You're not happy, Francis, because you don't have me. And then, as many of us would know, he started then exploring the path. What? Then he started tuning, what? Because God spoke to him in his heart, in the silence. And he says, Then he started doing everything with the consciousness, is this taking me towards God? And God has been in all cultures defined as the height of happiness. Paramahansa Yogananda ji, my guru, his guru Swami Sri Yukteswar said, finding God is is the funeral of all sorrows, and it's the end of all sorrows once you find him. And so St. Francis, then, to finish the story, he started meditating, he built churches, he spoke the word of God, and again and again he realized as much as God asked him to go out, he was himself recharged, or he was in communion with God more as he prayed, as he meditated, as he did some of these things which we will discuss, how to go about practicing this quality and developing it. But in the end, the most beautiful thing is, and I'm very fortunate I got a chance to go to this special cave where he received the stigmata of Christ, and next to it is a place where they say that his prayers were answered to such a degree that Lord Jesus himself every night would come to him in flesh and would sit on a rock and preach or bless him. And so we get a chance to see that place. And as I was thinking of this topic, I said, that is the fruit of God remembrance. That it's not, till you don't try, how will you know? Everybody comes to know anything only by trying. And when we are feeling desolate, that's often when we question the universe, when we question the higher realities, and they are always there. It's so surprising that God waits. And then he waits. Swami Kirana said he's in no hurry, because you see what's going to happen it's going to happen once, and it might as well happen from your side, from the devotee's side. And so because I was thinking about my own self, God was very much there when I didn't know about him, and God becomes more real the more I speak to him and the more I experience how he helps me in day-to-day activities, and of course helps everybody. And that's again a fruit of God remembrance. I'd like to also start by mentioning in the outset itself some of the stories that our gurus shared about this beautiful quality. And Paramahansa Yogananda ji would love to relate this story and between Krishna and Draupadi. And one time Krishna saw Draupadi, and he says, she was very happy. People were naturally quite delighted each time Krishna came and visited them. And at one point Sri Krishna said, Draupadi, why don't you practice some meditation techniques to do deep yoga techniques? And she said, my Lord, how I would love to practice those techniques, and how I've tried, but each time I try to focus my mind on the technique, I can't help but remember you. I can't get the thought of you out of my mind. And the master said that Krishna looked at her and simply lovingly smiled, that yes, we have to do these techniques. What is the benefit of a meditation technique? The guru gives the technique. Actually, it is said that it's only by the practice of guru given techniques to the devotee that he will ultimately come to realize the infinite Lord. That yes, a technique is a way to, you might say, find our way back. Paramahansa Yogananda ji said God had nothing to create this world out of, so it is not right to say that he created the world. It is more appropriate to say he became everything. And instead of manifesting everything from something outward, he became everything. But then it's so hard for us to understand. And initially, I'm sure in our spiritual evolution, we go through repeated rejection of that truth, because we are more familiar with ourselves and the outward reality. But then as we start meditating, for example, I was speaking about technique. A technique is something, especially in yoga, which gives us an experience beyond, you might say, the physical. And in yoga, a very well-known word is pranayam. Yam means control, pran means life force. You might say it's that thing which animates a living form more than a dead form. And that life force, they say, is what is animating everything. So when we practice a technique within ourselves, we come to realize, my breath is calm and I'm more alive. And as a doctor, I was always taught that if the patient is not breathing, you have to declare him, you know what. And then I came and Paramahansa Yogananda ji made a comment. He says, breathlessness is deathlessness. Interestingly, There's a beautiful Hindi word called Vishwas, and Yoganandaji spoke about it. It's made of two small words, Vi and Shwas. Shwas is breath, Vi means without. And of course, Vishwas, the word itself means faith. That it's only when your breath has been calmed that the faith will naturally come. Till then we are trying to convince our mind, like I said, our thoughts and ourselves, and again the outer world pulls us out. So a meditation technique does that. But then if somebody goes into a rapture by the very mention of God, by the very thought of seeing him or remembering his divine kindness, well, nothing wrong with that. It's good to enjoy. That's an aspect of God, and we can absorb ourselves in that also. Sri Yukteswar, Paramahansa Yogananda's guru, who many people know as a very stern saint and man of wisdom, in Autobiography of Yogi, he writes at one point, he was giving a satsang, and somebody asked him, what can throw a person into a rapture, bliss? And he says, the realization that God alone is. He actually said, God is. And then he corrected himself. He says, nay, God. He says that word alone is enough to take one into bliss. His name interestingly meant Yukteswar, one who is united with the Lord. And so God Remembrance has that beautiful quality. Another time, and we may find ourselves in similar situation. I certainly do. Today I've had a busy day, and sometimes you think, despite my best efforts, I could not meditate, or I could not devote myself to the practices that I would have loved. But at that time, we see that Paramahansa Yoganandaji said that at one time he was somewhere in Chicago, I think in the US, and really crisscrossing the place to give lectures and interviews and radio shows, and he was being invited to banquets. And at one point he said, I was feeling that, oh God, I've been talking about God, but I'm not meditating on Divine Mother. And the next time he sat to meditate, right away she came into his vision, and she smiled and she said, in missing me, in remembering me, you were always with me. That we should not think that God is here to punish us. This is a Leela. Only the very, very wise understand it. But we can all experience it at our own level. Swami Karandaji said, start with a few minutes. God remembrance can be done, friends, in many different ways. I spoke of meditation techniques, yes. But another very powerful, and you might even say it's a unique technique to each person, can be the technique of japa. And this is the technique where the name of the Lord is repeated again and again and again. And it could be even something like a small prayer. Reveal thyself, show me yourself, come to me, or joy, things. You can make up what you're aspiring for and make it strong, make it positive, make it an affirmation. Yoganandaji said, never beg. God doesn't like that. Which father would like to see his son beg to him for anything? He would much rather see him lovingly, rightfully ask him something across the you might even say dinner table, that dad, you know what, it's time for me to get this from you. And if you're right, if your attitude is right, if you're responsible, you're behaving well, I think, this should not be difficult. One time, somebody was telling me Swami Kiranandaji came out of his room around this time, Christmas season, and he says, I just don't understand what's this whole difficulty thing about finding God. And then he moved into another topic, and people are like, wow, what did he just say? But honestly, friends, the saints themselves say, it's as hard as you make it, or as simple as you want to make it. Swami Kiran at another time said, he says, just because people think of God or speak of God, they think they have to become Him. You can never become Him. You can always feel Him. You can pray to Him that He comes. You can unite your consciousness with Him. You can experience His presence in everything that we do. And that comes through japa. I learned a very beautiful, because why do I mention this? Because many times we are on the go. We are doing something, and repeating the Lord's name is a beautiful way to expand our heart. It can be chanted at the spiritual eye, it can be chanted at the heart center, and thereby you will come to know if something is working for you by your own degree of calmness. your own degree of joy. Like I said, when I didn't know about God, he was very much there. And one time I got really worried. I said, I wonder if I'm doing the right things. Will he come to me? And I don't, life is too short, everybody is saying. And then I happened to read a poem of Saint Tukaram in Maharashtra, and he was praying to God so forcefully. First he says, "Oh, will you come to me? Will you come to me?" Then he changes that. He says, "Well, of course you will come to me. You who have come to millions, why won't you come to me?" And I read that. I said, "Oh, of course. How can he leave anybody lingering or wandering?" That is our free will. That is actually an expression of his love. That go, take your time, do what you want. A very scary thought is that God fulfills our every desire. You should be very careful of the kind of desire you have. And even if you have a desire, Swami used to say at the end, always think of God and offer it to him. Whatever is thy will. God does not want to suppress us. But when we are in ignorance, when we are in forgetfulness of God, we can take the wrong route for a long time and then realize, I got everything, but my joy was missing. Where are my friends? Where is my harmony? Where is the goal I had set myself to? And with these things, we should come back to that. Saint Sukadeva, he once said, every moment that is not spent seeking God is a waste, and so don't be afraid of these things. But I also, on the other hand, see that through Karma Yoga, whatever we are doing, offer it to God. Whatever you are praying in your heart, offer it to God. Whatever you are trying to comprehend, it's very fine. It's the ideal thing maybe to tell God, I don't understand what I'm getting into. I don't understand what I'm doing. I don't understand how to do it. Because it's only when we ask these things, is he going to come and help us? People who are proud, who presume things, who are too sure of themselves, it cannot work. At one point, I told myself, I'm in an ashram, I'm in the monastery, why do I have to, maybe I should take a break, the mind is, otherwise sometimes the mind can be unceasingly thinking of God. And then so I took a break, very conscious break. 8 days had to pass before I realized that I had done things very subconsciously in those days, and there was no joy in those things because I was not asking Master or even walking with his joy. And that I share that story to this day, that fortunately it was just 8 days, that I immediately apologized. I told myself, I corrected myself. I said, God, remembrance is for me. It's not for God. It's not to please God. It's not to fulfill a chart or put a tick on something. Meditation itself, many people say, oh, I'm not made for meditation. Meditation, what we do is preparation of a meditation. Meditation, chiefly understood, is absorption in God. It is the state where, and Yoganandaji said, he can be experienced in many different ways. So those are some of the things. And many people, I'll end with this, they have this feeling, especially in today's world, that, oh, if I always keep talking of God, when will I do my work? And so Paramahansa Yoganandaji, in his book, which is now titled God is for Everyone, he writes about Saint Tukaram, that when somebody had pity on him, he was a family man but was not at all earning money. They said, why don't you come and fill my accounts at the end of the day? He said, sure. So after a few days, this person checked the account books, and on every paper where there should have been numerals, he had written God's name and made pictures and written his shlokas, and he was fired. But then Master says that happens. But if you read about Tukaram, he says I didn't perform a single miracle. He used to beg people. He said, believe me, I didn't perform anything. It's the Lord in his kindness who comes to my rescue each time. But then when we also take God's name, Paramahansa Yogananda's guru said, saintliness is not dumbliness, and divine visitations are not incapacitating. So many times when we are immature spiritually, we feel, oh, don't bother me, I'm godly. I'm trying to be godly. Well, why did God create this world if it was such a bad place? You have to be in the world, and the challenge, like we have understood, is to be in the world and love him. Krishna promises that I will come to all sincere souls, even those who have failed miserably, but who have surrendered their failure into me at the end of their life. Don't judge God. Don't judge anybody. Love Him and remember Him. And you will never be at fault. Once somebody asked Swami Karandaji, Sir, what is the most practical thing to do in today's times where there's a recession and all these things? And Swami says, I think loving God is the most practical things, the thing that one can do at any time. God bless you.